This podcast is brought to you by Rebecca Cassells of the Rising Dawn series. Do you like violence? Do you like smut? Are you tired of the stereotypical novels of werewolf romance out there and want something a little bit different? Then pick up Sparked Revolution, Book 1 in the Rising Dawn series by Rebecca Cassells. Available on Amazon, in Kindle, and paperback. You too can become a sponsor by heading on over to patreon.com/stories, the true and the fictional. Hello guys and welcome to another episode of Stories, the True and the Fictional. It is another episode, it is another interview, and before we bring him in for possibly another really long chat, because Ryan's been geeking out before we hit record, remember to check out our sponsors, Rebecca Cassells, Martin Kearns. I have a new book out, Ancora, check it out. And now that the promo's done, and I hope I'm saying this right, Russ Colchamiro, thanks for joining us.
You got it. How are you? All right, good job.
See, if I was pronouncing it, I would have gone. And if I was introducing you, I would have gone. And it's Russell Colchamiro.
Believe me, I've heard worse.
Awesome.
I've heard.
Well, before we get too crazy, the question we'd like to ask is, who is Russ Colchamiro?
Hey guys. So Russ Colchamiro here. I'm now sitting in my studio in northern New Jersey in the U.S. I'm born and raised New Yorker, but I migrated over here about 10, 12 years ago. I've been married almost creeping up on 25 years. I got 14-year-old twins, and so when they were little, we were like, I was living in Queens in a 2-bedroom apartment, so it was time to come over and buy a house. I write science fiction thrillers and space opera, mystery crime, and horror. I am a member of Crazy 8 Press, which is an author collective, and I host my own podcast, Russ's Rock and Roller Coaster, thus the whole studio. I've done probably 100 and, I don't know, I've lost track of 130, 140 episodes, and I've interviewed kind of like a who's who in the various genres that I just talked about. So that's me.
Awesome.
All right, I guess the interview's over. Thanks, guys.
No, a very important question I have seen, as you mentioned, you live in New Jersey. Are you a fan of The Sopranos?
Oh yes. So in fact, I live. So where the Sopranos takes place is minutes from where I live.
Oh my God, we're actually, me and my wife are watching The Sopranos. We just got Max out here in Australia about a month ago. I know you guys have had it for a long time. But I go as far back as I own the DVDs. I've watched The Sopranos about 100 times, and we're actually, I think we're on me and my wife's 10th watch through since we got together.
I'm due to start my next rewatch very soon.
It's just such a good show, and we always say if we ever come over to America, there is a Sopranos location tour that you can do in New Jersey, and we would absolutely be on that for sure.
So they'll say sometimes in the show, "Oh, it's over here. It's over on Bloomfield Avenue." Bloomfield Avenue is 5 minutes from my house.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna get along just fine then.
There you go. All right.
There we go. All right, so we have a tradition here to do some icebreaker questions.
All right.
These are the ones that you get ahead of time. But when we jump into the Patreon, it's off the cuff. It's anything.
Surprise.
Okay.
Yeah.
A surprise.
Right.
But these ones are scripted. Sorry to break the illusion, audience. But so we do encourage selfish answers. So please, no Miss Universe answers. You're not here to win us over. So with that in mind, if you could get rid of one thing in the world, what would it be?
Dictators.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not a fan of Saddam Hussein or Joseph Stalin or any.
I'm thinking about someone a little closer to home.
Oh, you mean Donald Trump?
They didn't say it.
No, I did. I'm the one. As you'll know, Russ, with Jamie. Jamie's more on the ball. He's very respectful in terms of what content goes out. With me, there's no filter between here and here. So I think we're up to almost 200 episodes, and we still haven't gotten cancelled yet. So I'm very, very pleased about that.
Fair enough.
But yeah, no, look, I can agree with that. The only dictator that I would still like to keep around is Sacha Baron Cohen's character in the movie The Dictator, where that just makes me crack up every time I watch that movie. But yeah, I
Fair enough.
think the world would be a lot better place if we didn't,
Yeah.
if we had a lot less Donald Trumps, a lot less Kim Jong Uns, or yeah, yeah, Kim Jong Uns. I'm sure they're regular listeners, so but yeah, no, I can definitely agree with that.
All right.
Excellent. Is there any particular dictator that you hate a lot more than any of the others?
Oh, it should be self-evident.
I can assure you, President Trump does not listen to this podcast. So you feel free, but I can respect that. I can respect that. We all know who you're talking about. All right. Well, question number 2. So, what's something that's on your bucket list?
So, my wife and I, individually and collectively, excuse me, we used to travel quite a bit. But
Okay.
since I had my kids, it's been not so easy to sort of to get around. So, I've been pretty far. I've been fortunate enough. I've traveled pretty far and wide over the years. We were just talking offline. I have a buddy who lives in Auckland. I was out there about 25 years ago for a couple of weeks, did a tour of the North Island. I'm dying to go back and hit the spots that I missed. And I only did the North Island. I didn't do the South Island. And I'd like to get to your side of the pond as well. And we want to go to Greece, where my family is from, Alaska, and the Galapagos.
Yeah, look, I could definitely agree with you in terms of New Zealand. I've been there a couple of times. The North Island is absolutely spectacular.
Yeah.
Me and my dad, I think back in 2012, we did a 3-week tour. We flew into Wellington and jumped in a
Right.
car and drove all the way up to the Bay of Islands and came
Yep.
back around
Yep.
to Wellington and flew out. We took 3 weeks to go.
Yeah.
And me and my dad are massive nerds, so we did the whole Lord of the Rings thing and
Oh,
um
see, a friend of mine literally just did that a couple weeks
yeah.
ago. That's one thing I didn't do, but one of my highlights. Did you do the glowworm caves?
We did definitely do the
Uh,
glowworm cage.
which I
Yeah,
wrote
definitely.
about extensively in one of my books, actually.
Oh wow, yeah, that's look the way that you just look you just walking through we did obviously you do it at nighttime. We did one at nighttime and when you're walking through the
Ooh,
woods it's absolutely pitch black and you go into the cave and then you just look up and it's just literally like looking at the sky filled with
yeah,
stars. It's
absolutely. Oh, yeah,
absolutely
that's
amazing.
Yeah.
exactly right. Yep, yep.
It's
We got
absolutely
we
amazing.
got
Yeah.
glowworms near me. I think it's about
Yeah.
2 hour drive from me. But
Okay.
but it's funny because you go there and there's a sign that says, "Please be quiet so you can see the glowworms." And you walk in there, there's all these tourists going,
Mhm.
screaming their heads off and going like, "Did you read the sign? Can
Well,
you sit
me
still?"
and me and Steph did that. That's the one in Katoomba, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did that one on one of our anniversaries, and yeah, it's exactly right. They took a group of 10 of us down, and they're like, please make sure that you be quiet so that
Okay.
you'll see more glowworms. And yeah, there were just people just, oh wow, look, oh wow, oh," just at the me and
Yep.
Steph were just going, Jesus, we just want to see the glowworms.
That's it.
But
Yeah.
but yeah, that I think traveling is a really good thing to have on a bucket list because it is. While sometimes it might seem like it's a little bit out of reach, it is definitely an achievable item to have on your bucket list.
Well,
Um,
I first started traveling when I did a backpacking tour when I did my last semester of college. I went to Manchester in England,
okay.
but I
Yeah.
backpacked for about a month by myself. And before then, I'd never really gone anywhere. And when you're from the US, especially, it's not as much now because after the internet went live, international travel became much easier, much more accessible, right? You could book things online. I did it in 1994, so
Wow.
pre-internet.
Wow.
You couldn't go on Google to check stuff because there was no Google, right?
Yeah.
So it was really just you're going through a guidebook and you're relying on, literally the kindness of strangers or not, and research and sort of winging it. And it was a life-changing experience for me then. And what had happened was I did about a month in Europe. I did, I can't even remember 12, 15 cities in 3 or 4 weeks. And then I ended up back in Manchester. Now you have to remember, as an American at that time, when I got back to Manchester, which is in the northwest of the country,
Yep.
and at that time, I was a senior in college. I was 23. I was basically done. I was pretty much on vacation, and everyone else, I was living in a freshman dorm because it was just an exchange program, and I was meeting people, and I was like, oh, and I thought I was hot stuff. I'm like, oh, I was in Paris, and I was in Nice, and I was in Austria and Germany and there and that, and they're like, yeah. So yeah, I was just there for like a month. To them, it's no big deal. In Europe, you drive over,
Yeah.
you drive the car, and you're in another country. In the United
Yeah.
States, you drive your car, you're in another state.
Yeah.
So when I came home, I was a rock star. They were like, "You
Yeah.
went where? Oh my God!"
Yeah.
And they were like, "Who cares? Right? You're no
Yeah.
big deal." And that was a huge lesson, and it really opened my eyes to, especially in the U.S. because it's so big and we were so insular. You just think that the world revolves around you. And in some ways it did a little bit, but it was great for me, especially at that age. I was only 23 and I had never been outside the country. And to really meet, I met people from all over the world,
Yeah.
Australia, New Zealand, Japan, China, Denmark, and just their stories were so different and their attitudes were different, which was great for me just because it was just wonderful to hear these different perspectives. And yet we were all more or less around the same age. And it comes down to, you know what? People are just people. Either
Yeah.
you can connect with someone on a human level or you can't. And all
Yep.
the other nonsense kind of fades. A lot of it really just fades away. Just be a person. And,
Yeah.
you share your stories, they'll tell you their stories. And it's amazing how much really we all do the same things. We want the same things. It's just the details might be a little
Yeah.
different, but the attitude, I was really grateful for that. And it did, you hear someone might say, oh, I did a thing, I saw a thing and it changed my life. But they say it because it was exciting for the moment, but it doesn't change them. This changed me radically because after that trip, I was terrified. I'd never been anywhere. After that, I realized, what was I so afraid of? I could do this.
Yeah.
And then I started doing it. And after that, I kind of traveled all over the world. And I mean, all over the world. I've traveled quite a bit through the US and,
Yeah.
overseas because it gave me the confidence to realize that it was doable by me.
Mhm.
And I didn't need someone to chaperone me and figure things out because I figured it out. I mean, it didn't always go so great, but that's how you learn. And
Exactly.
it was really something special for me. And as a result, I've made friends all over the world. And had I not gone, that never would have happened. So it was big for me.
Yeah.
Excellent. That's a really good experience.
Yeah, it was
I
incredible.
definitely, yeah, I 100% when I was younger, I wish I traveled a little bit more, but yeah, that's something definitely I think is on my bucket list as well. But just to have that experience and just you're right about when you're in Europe, when you start off in London or Manchester or somewhere, you can literally travel for a few hours and be in a different country, and check so many different things off the
Yeah,
list of
yeah.
countries to visit. So I think that would have been
And
a
I've
really good
I've
experience.
driven across the U.S. twice by myself.
Okay.
I mean, it's 3,000 miles from tip to tip. I
Mhm.
mean, it's really far, right? Takes
Yeah,
5 days, it takes 5, maybe 6 days to go all the way across and all the way back. You just do the same thing in Europe. Like you start in France, you're gonna end up in in like
Yeah.
Pakistan. You
yeah.
drive like that. I mean, it's trippy. US is big and strange, but anyway.
Yes. I've done a lot of driving through my country, but never gone west. I think it's like I was on a podcast a while back, and he asked, is an American, and he asked me, "How far are you from the rabbit-proof fence?" Yeah. I'm like, I'll have to look that up because I wasn't really sure where it was, and then I looked it up, and it was 41-hour drive.
Oh, jeez. Yeah,
Like that's
that would do it.
without stopping, like
Yeah.
no breaks, just 41 hours.
Uh-huh.
Well,
Yep.
put it this way, it's quicker to get from Sydney to New Zealand than it is to get from Sydney to Perth. And Sydney and Perth are they're in the same country as us.
Yeah,
Right.
It's quicker via plane to get to New
yeah,
Zealand, which is
Yeah.
three and a
Well, I
half
mean,
hours, and you get to Perth, it
Australia,
takes 4.
yeah,
Yeah.
Australia is massive. I mean,
yep,
it's a gigantic chunk of land.
yep,
Well,
and
that's
yet,
it. I think Perth, WA is the only state that I haven't visited.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I definitely on the bucket list,
Yeah.
but it just obviously, it's a whole different culture over there.
Mm,
It was almost its own colony at one point. Cool. All right, let's move on to the fun question,
okay.
the most judgmental question, because this is the joke that Ryan makes. Even if depending on your answer, the interview may be over. Like that's how serious he
Uh-oh.
takes this
All right.
question.
All right, I'm ready for you.
So it's kind of like a two-parter.
Okay.
So, what is the greatest sitcom ever made? And if that's not the one that's your favorite, or the one that you binge the most, which is? So you kind of got like two answers if you want.
Greatest sitcom ever made. Huh. Hmm. I looked at that. I saw the question earlier. I don't know that I could say. Are you asking me what I think is the best or what is my favorite?
Well, you got
Both.
that's both. So two answers.
Hmm.
Because sometimes when people say what they, in their opinion, what the greatest sitcom is, it might not be their favorite. They're just saying, in my opinion, this is the greatest of all time. But my favorite is, and then
All right.
tell us your favorite.
So the truth is, I don't know that I could come up with with one that is absolutely the best. I mean, I would say in their prime, the best ones, in my opinion, ever would include MASH, All in the Family, Seinfeld. I would I could argue that those are the top three.
Hmm.
My favorite, it really kind of depends on my mood. I will say that right now I am in my rewatch of The Big Bang Theory right now. So I don't
Nice.
know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty acceptable answer. MASH definitely is in the top, and even though like younger people like myself and Jamie, even though we've just sort of hit our 40s, we I can still appreciate and respect MASH. It used to be random episodes would pop up on TV on a Saturday afternoon, while we were waiting for mum to cook dinner or whatever that would be.
yeah.
And you always get a laugh out of it. And I definitely, and Seinfeld for sure. Seinfeld's one of my top three for 100%. I've watched it many, many times. And how they could do 9 seasons on a show about nothing is
Yeah.
absolutely
Well,
insane.
it's funny. I actually interviewed on my show. I interviewed a guy who used to write a little bit for Seinfeld. It was interesting. I asked him about that, and he says, "Really, it's not a show about nothing. It's a show about selfishness," which I
Mm.
thought
Okay.
which was kind of an interesting answer. If I had to round out a couple more, I would probably put up just Friends. Was real good. Scrubs is up there for me.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm actually rewatching Scrubs for like the 11th
I
time, whatever it is
yeah.
right now. But like the energy's a little bit different, so it really kind of just depends on my
Yeah.
mood. So I would say like if you ask me what are my top 10, I could probably come up with 10.
Yeah.
If I'm in this mood, I watch this. If I'm in that mood,
Yeah.
I'll watch that. But
Yeah. No, I
No, that,
love Bill Lawrence. He started on
yes.
Friends and then he did Scrubs, and Scrubs was just I
Well,
just
he didn't Bill Lawrence didn't do he did what was it called? Spin City was him
yes, yeah,
with Michael J. Fox. And he does now he's a producer on Ted Lasso. He
yep,
writes Shrinking, which
yeah.
actually,
yep.
if you watch Shrinking, and I know because I'm a nerd like this,
Mm.
it's basically Scrubs, just as
Yep.
psychiatrists. All the
Yep.
characters
Exactly
are
right.
they're exactly the same, and in fact, word for word. So Harrison Ford in the last season, one of the things he'll say, "woof," which is exactly what Dr. Cox does on
Yeah,
Scrubs. He basically is Dr. Cox. They're the
yeah,
same
Yeah.
characters, right? And Jason Segel is JD, and it's
yeah,
basically the same show. It's the
yeah,
same comic timing, the same jokes, the same rhythms,
yeah,
which is all good. I mean, I still like it, but
yeah.
Oh,
I'm actually really,
Ted Lasso. I don't
yeah.
know that I would call it a sitcom as much as I would call it a comedy, but
Yeah,
that actually would go towards the top as well.
yeah.
Definitely. I Jamie introduced me to Bill Lawrence in general with when I first met him, he said, I mean, I'd heard of Scrubs, but I'd never watched it. And then I met him and he's like, you need to watch it. And I watched it. I love Bill Lawrence. I absolutely love Ted Lasso. It's one of my favorite shows of all time.
Yeah,
And
it's
it's really
wonderful.
nice to meet someone who actually, another person who enjoys Shrinking. Every other person I speak to has not watched it. And I've watched both seasons and I love it.
I like it a lot. I have a couple of. I will say this. It's funny. I had a conversation with my friends, I think that I think this for me, I like the second season better than the first. I
Yep.
thought the first one they overplayed their hand with how self-destructive he was
Yep.
because like we're supposed to be rooting for him, but you're telling me, wait, so you're bringing home like coke whores
Yep.
where your teenage daughter lives and she just lost her mother,
Yep.
and then you had a guy in the army who has rage issues to live in your house. I'm having a hard time seeing you as like the lovable hero who I just want to see make it right.
Yep.
I don't know. I didn't love that. And then I think conversely, in the second season, I think where one thing I think is messed up, and for those of you, I hope I'm not spoiling anything, but they meet the guy who killed his wife in a car accident, a drunk drive accident, and they're trying to make peace. He's trying to make peace with it. And I could understand if they said, listen, I've met you. You actually seem like a decent guy. You made a terrible mistake. You ruined my life, but you didn't do it out of hate. You screwed up. I don't have to hate you. But do you really think I'm going to let you into my world? You're out of your freaking mind. And the fact that no one in his circle came to his defense and said, you know what, guys, maybe give the guy a break. That guy killed his wife, and you're giving him crap for not being lovey-dovey with him. Like, I don't know. That to me, that doesn't really pass the sniff test on any level. I can't. That was one thing I just couldn't get past.
No, I completely agree. I think with the daughter, I really liked when she was like, no, I completely hate you. I completely, you've got nothing. And then she wrote that letter, and then she started to develop that relationship with him. By the way, Jamie, the guy that killed his family is played by Brett Goldstein, aka
That's
Roy
exactly
from
right.
Ted
Ted,
Lasso. He's
that's
my
right.
favorite. He's my absolute
He's great.
favorite character in Ted
Roy
Lasso.
Kent.
Of course.
And
Okay. Roy Kent,
and
of course.
I've seen him in a lot of Ricky Gervais shows as well. Like he was in Derek, and he's been in a lot of stuff over there. But yeah, look, and in the finale, obviously when Jason Segel pretty much, again, spoiler alert for a show that finished last year. Obviously you could tell that Brett Goldstein's character was on the verge of taking his own life, and
Right.
and then Jason Segel's character literally with I think one or two words saved him. And they just sat down on the. I like how that ended, how that rounded out
That
the
was
season.
See that I agree. See that to me, that's a nice moment. He's saying, like, I'm putting my grief aside or
Yes.
whatever I'm doing with it because you're suffering and I can do that for you. I can accept that part
Yeah.
of it, and I can, because that's a human to me. That felt like that's really you're digging deep to do a
Yeah.
kindness, but to have other people give him crap for not embracing him into his world. I'm like, he did kill his wife. I mean,
Yeah.
how buddy do you think we're really gonna be? Because that just ain't gonna happen. It's just not gonna happen.
It's not. And if that something like that happened to my wife, there would be. I'm not a bigger man than Jason Segel. You would never. I would be this close to doing something bad.
Of course you would. That's my whole point. Of course you would. Anybody would.
Yeah.
Anyway,
But it's such a good show, and it's a typical Bill Lawrence. 1 minute you're laughing, and 1 minute you're about to start crying. Same with Ted Lasso. Same with Scrubs. It's just he's got that formula, and even though he does it again and again, it just works with everything
totally
he
works.
does.
Absolutely, 100%, 100%.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, well, I'm finally glad I've met someone who's watched the second season and actually enjoys it. So, well done. Okay, so question number 4 is: what is your zombie apocalypse plan?
My zombie apocalypse plan. Well, it's funny that you should mention it. We'll get to it a little bit later, but I actually just wrote a year or so ago. So one of my books basically has a zombie apocalypse. This is big zombie apocalypse stuff right here.
Oh wow.
Well, if we actually have a zombie apocalypse, I don't really see any real good way out of a zombie apocalypse.
Yep.
So, like, here's the thing. I don't want to be the survivor of a zombie apocalypse because if the zombies are here, like, I have no desire to be alive during like a Walking Dead type of situation.
Yeah.
Like I'm out. So I'm thinking, spend a great day with my kids and my wife if I can, smoke a big fat joint, get really high, and just take my car and take it right off a fucking bridge, man. I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm out. I got no interest in I have no interest in surviving. I got no
Yeah.
interest in fighting off zombies. Nope. I'm sorry. At this point in life, if the zombie apocalypse comes, I want no part of it. Sorry. That may not seem heroic, but
No.
No, I think
I'm out.
I can
I'm out.
as as I get older, I can appreciate that a lot more because
Yeah.
when you think about it, we watch all these shows like The Walking Dead, The Last of Us, and all these zombie apocalypse shows and movies. I'm the same. I don't think that I would survive. Even if I tried, I don't think I'd survive long enough. And even if I did survive, do I want to live in a world with no power, where I have to fight for
Well,
food,
I
where
will. Yeah, I'll qualify my answer though. It depends on how bad the zombie apocalypse is. Like if it's a
Mhm.
Walking Dead, forget it. No,
Yeah.
I am out. I'm OUT out. Even in like The Last of Us, at least there are pockets of civilization where
Hmm.
they're trying. And if it was, and
Yeah.
if, and it has to be if it was in a community where people have banded together and they've kind of cobbled together some sort of a vestige of life, and at least there's a shot. I don't know, maybe. All right, maybe I can hang
Yeah.
around, but unless it's like that, and if it's Walking Dead, forget it. I am out. Oh, sorry. I've seen that movie. I definitely know how it ends, and I don't need to live through it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But yeah, I can definitely agree. Last of Us, I was actually saying that to my wife when we watched the latest episode. That it's not as
So,
doesn't seem as
I've
wide.
only seen the first episode of season 2. So
Okay, I won't spoil. I'm not going to spoil it. 100%, I won't spoil it. You need to watch episode 2 though, because that's the one
yeah.
where everything
No, I
happens.
know.
But
I'm getting to it. I'm getting to it.
Yeah.
but I like exactly what you said about it being more civilized. Like there's a lot. It doesn't seem as it's as widespread as The Walking Dead. So I
Right.
think I would agree with you. If I was in that community that everyone is in at the beginning of season 2, in with when they do
Yeah.
the time jump 5 years later, um, I think I would be okay. But
Right.
I think I would prefer to have been born after the apocalypse happens
Right. So you don't know any.
because exactly,
Mm.
exactly. I'm a massive gamer. And I'm a massive reader too. I do all my reading digitally. I have a few hardcover books left, but because I read so much, and I don't have the room to store all the
Yeah.
books that I have on my Kindle or on my tablet that I do in real life. So I would be honestly, I'm just going to admit it, I would be 100% lost without technology, in a bad way. So I would much rather be born where these things are already gone, than actually be born. The apocalypse happens, and then I have to reminisce about all the games that I'm missing out on. That's just
Yeah.
me. I'm selfish
But
like
hey,
that.
all right,
All
all
right.
good.
The final icebreaker question. This is a bit of a fun one, throwing back to the late 80s, early 90s. So, Bill and Ted arrive outside your house in their phone booth time machine and say, "Whoa, Russ, Rufus asked us to give you a free ride in our phone booth time machine. Where do you go?"
Where do I now? So I want to ask: is this a pure like Bill and Ted where I can travel through time in on the U.S. or Earth, or is it more like Doctor Who where I could go anywhere?
Well, let's just say you can
I
go
think
anywhere.
anyway, yeah.
Anywhere. You know what? I would trade up and I would hang out with Doctor Who.
Wow.
Yep, I would.
Any
If that
particular Doctor Who?
so I have watched everything from the modern iteration, starting, with Chris Eccleston all the way up
Yep.
to now. I think, well, and Sudi, who's doing it now, I think is great. I think he's great. Jodie Whittaker was great. Um, Chris Eccleston was great, and why am I drunk? Come on, Russ.
David Tennant, Matt Smith.
David Tennant was Dave. I really loved them all. I will say that what's his name? The guy who did Peter Capaldi. I think he didn't.
Peter Capaldi, yeah.
I thought he found himself really well in his final season, but I don't know if it was his final season, I'd be good with it. But I guess if I had to pick one doctor, it would probably be David Tennant. But and Sudi would, I don't know. I would say Tennant 1 and Sudi 2 with Jodie Whittaker 3. And Matt Smith 4, but super close.
Yeah. Well, they're all brilliant actors.
Yeah. Look, and I think that David Tennant is, I mean, I haven't watched much of Doctor Who. I'm not really a sci-fi guy in terms of that kind of thing, but David Tennant, in my eyes, is one of the best actors that we currently have out there. I loved him in Jessica Jones as the Purple Man, who obviously, for those people who don't know, can control.
He was scary as hell.
He really was. He really was.
I wasn't a huge fan of Jessica Jones as the series, but he was a real standout. He was like legitimately like, if I was ever going to be like, that guy was terrifying. He is just like as evil could be.
And he I think is one of the most comic accurate depictions of well, they call him the Purple Man in the comics, but he's probably one of the most accurate comic book villains I have seen, because it felt like they said, this is what this character does, but let's not make it PG. Let's go true to what he does. And they really did. They did it. And yeah, David Tennant, in my mind, is just, he's one of the best actors that we have at the moment. So I can definitely agree with that.
Boom. Well, that's the icebreaker's done. You passed with flying colors, I believe.
All right. Woo!
All right, let's get on to the fun stuff. This podcast is brought to you by Martin Kearns and the Valor of Valhalla series. In the battle between two ancient evils, can one naive young man become the last hope against powerful creatures of legend? Beneath the Veil is the gripping first book in the Valor of Valhalla dark urban fantasy series. If you like reluctant heroes, infernal myths, and bloody epic clashes, then you'll love Martin Kearns' formidable foray into the unknown. So head on over to readkearns.com and grab yourself a copy of Beneath the Veil today. The most common question we ask is, tell us about your writing journey. How did it start and how did you get to where you are?
So I was, writing bits and pieces since I was a kid, all garbage. But then really when I got into my 20s, I started to get a little bit more serious about it. I had my younger years were pretty chaotic, and I had some, my childhood was a little challenging. So I'm a little bit of a late bloomer, kind of just across the board, because I was dealing with like life stuff. But once I kind of was out on my own, I started to get a little bit more serious, and then I published my first novel, Finders Keepers, in 2010. Took me 7 years. Took me 7 years to write that book, and it's a sci-fi backpacking sci-fi comedy, kind of like Bill and Ted meets Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And that came out in 2010, and I got a lot of just as a completely unknown author, first time out, I got a national distribution contract by myself. My book was in Barnes and Noble and about 25 stores throughout the US, which was very exciting. But they didn't sell in the store. And then the world changed. The economy crashed, and the world it was right at the cusp of the Great Recession and the digital transformation, the ebooks. And so the infrastructure of the publishing world crumbled out from underneath my feet just when I was getting started. I did 2 other books in the series, Genius to Milo and Astropalooza. I love the series. And I was very happy with it. But I found that, and I thought that I was going to spend my years writing nothing but kind of like my Discworld, it's sort of like this is going to be like my Terry Pratchett thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that as time went on, I wanted to write more action, more genre fiction, more mystery, more crime, more space opera. And I evolved from there. And I wrote a space opera called Crossline, which I was really happy with, but I got undercut by some conventions in my area got canceled like right around the same time, and the launch didn't go great, and then the digital world kept shifting, and suddenly I found myself adrift because at that point, to a lot of the reading market, I was unknown. They just didn't know who I was. Fair enough. I mean, you can't know everybody. And I kind of had to figure out, like, what am I going to do? So I started writing a whole bunch of, for about 4 or 5 years, I'd been getting invited because I started to meet people. Because when I first put out my first book, I didn't know anyone. I had no community at all. And I was very kind of resistant because I was not a joiner at that point, because that was just where I was as a person. But the reality is that you can't, if you think you're going to make it on completely on your own, I'm not saying you can't, but boy, it is not easy. And over time, I was getting to make relationships, and I was getting invited to participate in, hey, contribute a short story to this anthology, to this collection. And at that point, I was not comfortable with short form fiction. I just couldn't crack the code in my head.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the line, I kind of had an aha moment, and it was kind of like, hey, dumbass, it doesn't have to be 90,000 words. Even if it's 5,000 words, your story still has a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yeah.
And I kind of went, oh yeah, I guess it does. I guess that is kind of how it works. And then suddenly I started to do it, and I started writing a whole bunch of shorter stuff and working with some other folks. And I had met some other people, some other writers in New York, who turned out to be the guys at Crazy 8 Press. Now, if you don't know any of them, Peter David was one of the authors. He wrote a lot of those big, the Hulk.
Yeah.
Comic books. So Peter David's part of my crew, and Michael
Oh,
Janfried,
wow.
and Bob Greenberger and Alan Rosenberg, a lot of Star Trek authors, and they invited me in to be part of their crew. And that kind of really, I'm not going to say it put me on the map, but it did elevate me. Suddenly I went from this being this pretty obscure author to sort of part of a thing. And all of a sudden people were kind of like, oh, well, who's that guy? And it helped, and it opened up a bunch of doors for me. And then once I started to do that, like with anything else, you really got to put in the work. And I did. And some of the things I did well, some of them did less well. The quality of the work, I let other people kind of decide that. I would, if looking back on some of the stuff that I did, some of it I go, wow, that's pretty good. And some stuff you go, oh God, I'd like to have that one back. You're like, because you think it's good at the time, and you're like, oh, this needed like 2 or 3 more rounds of edits, but whatever, it's all. And then what really changed for me in a fairly significant way is, so I mentioned this backpacking comedy series. It's 3 books, and in the second book, I introduced this character called Angela Hardwick, who's a private eye, but intergalactic private eye. But she was almost irrelevant to the plot of the novel. It was kind of like blink and you miss her. She popped in for 1 chapter once. She was a throwaway character, but she showed up, and I went, now that's interesting. I love private eyes. I love it. I love mystery. I love crime. I love noir. I always have. I love to read it. I love to watch it. I love to write it. And I said, all right, this is something. So I bumped her up to a very strong secondary character in the 3rd book. And I'm like, okay, this is kind of working for me. And I thought, I think I want to do a series with her, but I just don't know if I'm, can I really write a series on this one character and a female character? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, so I put out an anthology as part of Crazy 8 Press called Love, Murder, and Mayhem, which I actually would have retitled doing it again. They're all superhero tropes, super villains, superheroes, AI, off-world spaceships, time travel, that kind of thing. But I did it because I wanted to give Hardwick a platform to write one story with her in the lead, first person, and I did. And I wrote, it was, I don't know, it was 7,000 to 8,000 words, and it was a murder. It was an arson case in a music club. I don't know if you can see, I'm a musician. I'm a drummer.
Yep.
I play some guitar, and I like to weave in music into a lot of things that I do, and it worked. And I said, okay, I'm gonna do this. And then as you can see right behind me, and this is really what I've been working on for the last several years. So Angela Hardwick, as I said, hard-boiled intergalactic private eye. In my mind, she is part Blade Runner, part Doctor Who, and part John Wick.
Oh wow.
She takes on the kind of cases that you think a private eye would take: missing persons, kidnapping, extortion, arson, murder, corporate espionage. But she also takes on cases that deal with time travel, parallel universes, alien uprising, androids, folds in space-time, and that kind of thing, and all the other kind of sci-fi tropes that go with it. And I've written 5 novels in the series so far. There's Crackle and Fire, Fractured Lives, Hot Ash, Blunt Force Rising, and Trigger Point. And Trigger Point, which was the 5th one that came out last year, it actually won from one of the review a bunch of folks who review books rated this the best book of 2024. So that was pretty exciting.
Wow.
So that was
That's
fun.
awesome.
Yeah, and I've been really fortunate. It's done fairly well, and I've gotten some very heavyweight names have really put their love behind it. So, for example, Nicholas Meyer, the guy who wrote and directed Star Trek II: Wrath of Khan and
Wow.
others, he's a big fan of the series. I figure, if the Godfather of Star Trek puts a stamp of approval on my books, I think I must have done something right.
Yeah.
And I've done 5. I've also written 6 or 7 short stories that she's in. I have another book coming out later this year, in December. It's a mashup between Hardwick and Sherlock Holmes. So where we're seeing Hardwick from this intergalactic life intruding on like 1890s London, and the two of them kind of go back and forth between each other's worlds, because I wanted to see if I could pull in those. I'd never written Sherlock Holmes either, and it's gonna be part of a larger project. So you're gonna get to see. I'm trying to draw Sherlock Holmes into her world and have her come into his world and see how that works. And there's 5 books in the series right now, and what I want to make sure that the folks who are interested in is that you do not have to read them in order. And you don't have to read the whole series. You don't have to commit to the whole series. Think of it like a James Bond movie, right? You could watch one Bond movie once. You don't have to know. It's like, oh, he's a super agent who does stuff. That's all you have to know. And they tell you everything you need to know. Well, I do the same thing in my books. So it doesn't matter. There's no commitment necessary. Now, there's character development throughout. So whether or not you're a purist and you want to start with book 1 and go all the way through to the end, that's up to you, but you don't have to. You could pick any book, read 1, and be out. I reintroduce the world building, and I reintroduce the characters every time out. So I wanted to make sure that each book could feel like book 1. And I consider the first 5 books to be kind of like series 1. And I'm planning to do at least another 5 novels, which they're in the queue. I'm actually right now, I'm writing my first traditional horror novel, which should be finished this year, because I want to show readers just another side to me. But within Hardwick, there's a lot of street level investigations, but there's also a lot of cosmic mayhem that goes on. So you kind of get a mix of this. Every case starts off, it seems sort of seemingly ordinary, and it gets bigger and bigger and more dangerous and more expansive. What I like to just let folks know about Hardwick is that, so she's in her early mid-30s. And when we first meet her, she has a 5-year-old son named Owen. Now, the question is, and it's thematic in the first 2 books, can I be this hard-boiled private eye who's doing crazy stuff? I mean, this is not a 9-to-5 gig. You don't just say, okay, it's time to go home. I mean, if some alien uprising pops up, I mean, you could be gone for days, weeks, months, years, who knows? So can I do this kind of dangerous work and be a good mother to my son? If the answer is yes, okay, then you got to show me what that life looks like. If the answer is no, I can't do both, she's got some choices to make. What does that look like? And what does that look like? So that really plagues her for the first two books. Now, in addition, Hardwick also has a protege, Eric Whistler, who's about 10 years her junior. And he's young and cocky, and he first shows up. He's like, put me in, coach. I'll do anything. I'll dumpster dive for evidence. I'll stay up for 4 days straight. I don't care. I just want to be part of your world. But after a couple of books, he starts to level up and he starts to think, he basically says, I want a seat at the table. And she basically says, oh, well, good for you. I don't think so. And the two of them really have a lot of friction because she's not ready to let him all the way in, and he's not ready to be, treated like a child anymore. And he has to prove himself, and there's a lot of tension, and that kind of plays through the entirety of the 5 books because I wanted him to sort of, while Hardwick has her own journey, I wanted Whistler to have his own. And it doesn't always go that well. It's very challenging for the both of them. And throughout the series, you see them working together, fighting, having they have a lot of problems, but there's something there between them. And then she's got a cast of characters who kind of show up in supporting roles, who kind of pop in and out of the various books to kind of help populate her world.
That's awesome. Wow. That's so much in there. My one question rattling through my brain is like, are you a robot? Like, how do you pump out all this stuff? Like, let's make it easy. What's your writing process like? Do you just do one book at a time, or do you kind of?
Yeah, so when it comes to writing a novel, what I typically do is I write one novel every year. It takes me about 10 months all in, from clacking the first word until, all right, it's ready to physically be a book. Yeah. I usually take about, let's call it 3 to 4 months to write the first draft. I take about 6 to 8 weeks to edit. So all in, let's call it 5 months.
Yeah.
Then I hand my manuscript off to a very close group of beta readers. I give it away for 2 months. I said, just go do your thing. And then I kind of clear my head. While I'm doing that, I typically write something else, something shorter.
Yeah.
And I get the feedback from them, and they say, well, this was good. This did not, I didn't understand this, and various notes. And then I spend about 6 to 8 weeks working through their edits and getting it tight and clean until I think it's ready. So that's kind of what I do. In terms of when I typically write in the morning. I used to write at night, but if I do that, I can't sleep after that because my mind can't wind down. So I'm up early and I write for, whatever it is. I try to knock out 1,000 to 1,500 words a day. Some days it's more, some days it's less. But usually I can knock out about 80 to 90,000 words, and let's call it 14 weeks, 12 weeks, 14 weeks, something like that. And so I write a couple of short things in between, and that's pretty much, I find I could do a novel and maybe 2 or 3 shorter things a year, and that's probably it for me, because at a certain point it's just because I work full time.
Yeah.
And I write, and I physically go on book tour. I go to conventions, and I do this like we're doing now, and I have a side job as well, and I have 2 kids, and I'm married, and I got a wife and a dog and life and family and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of moving parts. The calendar just rules my life, and I just look at it as a grid, and I literally just block off chunks of time, and there it is. So actually, I'm actually going to take this out. This is an ice pack. The reason I was a little, I play pickleball on Monday nights, so
cool.
I was playing. If I don't ice my shoulder, then I'm in trouble the next day. So what happens when you that's when you start packing on the years. Body doesn't respond as well.
You just did that to prove to us that you're not a robot. That's right.
Yeah, I did that actually. Yes.
So you basically wouldn't be sleeping much at all if you've got a full-time job, a side job, writing, a wife, 2 kids, a life, and you're playing pickleball on Mondays. You don't sleep.
Well, it's funny. So not funny, but so I know, like you guys, I know a ton of writers, and the truth is that there are some I write my output is more than some and a lot less than others. I know writers who, if they wrote as what I do in a year, they'd be like, well, I didn't have such a great year. I only wrote one novel and 3 short stories.
Yeah.
Where they say normally I write 2 or 3 novels and 10 short stories. Like,
Yeah.
my brain doesn't work that way. I
No.
can't write. I don't write that fast, and I don't know that I mean, if I could and do it at the level that I'd be happy with, well, sure, I guess I'd want to write more, but that's about the most that I could do. What I have found for me, and so I'm going to be. So actually, my birthday's this week, Thursday. I'll be 54. I'll be 54 on Thursday, and
Happy birthday for Thursday.
thank you. One of the things that I learned about myself a long time ago, and I've refined it over the years, is that, and that's funny, I did one of these about a week or so ago with someone else. Time is my most precious commodity, because to me, time is like land. They're not making any more of it.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like I don't know how much time I got left on this earth.
Yeah.
Hopefully I got another 50 years to go, but I don't know. We'll see. That's the way I think. My intention is I'm going to live to be at least 100. And with modern medicine, assuming these maniacs don't put us back into the dark ages, it'll keep advancing, and that'll probably be true. But even if that is true, how many peak years of output do I have at my age? I'm 54, so what, 20? Maybe I got 20 years of prime energy left. And eventually we all start to slow down. So how do I want to spend my time? And what I have done is I have very little patience or tolerance for people or situations that waste my time. And when I say waste, what I mean is using it unproductively, dragging me into drama, wasting me, just, stop bothering with things that don't matter. You know what? You do you, and that's fine. But I'm not interested in that. And as the years have gone on, I've just pulled myself out of these relationships and situations that just drag me down the rabbit hole. And I found when I did that, there was more time to do the things that I want. And the way my days are structured, I write, I stretch to keep my body somewhat limber. I exercise. I play pickleball probably 3 days a week if I can. I play some guitar. I write. I do my job. I spend time with my family. I watch. I watch everything. I read as much as I can. My days are really full because I want them to be full. And I could literally just sit back. And to me, by the way, sitting back on the couch and watching 4 episodes of The Sopranos is a perfectly wonderful use of time. That's not a waste to me at all. It's great because it energizes me in different ways. So the reason I'm able to do whatever level of output I have, and it's, like I said, more than some, less than others, it's because I do the best that I think I'm able to sort of pull myself out of distractions. And because of that, it allows me to put that energy into things that I think are more fruitful for me. And that's what enables me to do these things. And because I'm not being, what happens when you get pulled into a drama, it's not just the time that you're spending in that drama, then it's the after effect. Then you're all pissed off and you're stressed out. You're like, I can't believe so-and-so did such and such and said this and did that. And you're stomping around and you're agitated and you're upset. Well, I can't do anything I don't like that energy. It doesn't mean it never happens, but it's a lot less than it used to be. So rather than spending minutes, hours, days, weeks being irritated about things that are not fruitful in any way, that mess is gone. And now I can do the stuff that I like. And as long as I keep myself focused in that manner, which I do every day, and you don't see it here, but I have these little reported notebooks because I was a journalist. And every day, 7 days a week, I put out my top 10 things. What do I need to do today? And I try to knock off as many as I can. And the day is over. I'm like, oh, right, I had a good day. And that's how it works for me. It doesn't mean that there's not a system that would be more productive, but it seems to be working out fairly well. So
I do the notebook thing too.
Oh, there you go.
No, I think what you're saying about, cutting out all the distractions and all the, the negative energy and everything, I can definitely relate to that. I used to be one of those people who wanted everyone to like me, regardless of how bad they treated me and all that kind of thing. And then last year I spent 10 months in hospital, and I kind of had that same epiphany that you had. I kind of like, why am I wasting the time that I have in people that don't give a shit about me? And I somehow want these people to love me and to like me. Why? And I'm always getting drawn into this drama of their lives and other things. It's like I don't focus on me. I'm always spending my time trying to make other people happy. And when I was in hospital, I just had that epiphany one day, and I literally just said, "Fuck it, I'm gonna do me, and I'm gonna do the people that I know that genuinely care about me." And there's like 7 in the world.
That's a lot.
It is, and that's, you know what, I realized you don't have to have 100 million friends,
No,
or people that you want to spend time with,
that's right.
because then you can devote more passion and more energy to the people that actually care about you than the people
That's
that
right.
don't.
100%.
And yeah, so I can really, really understand that. And I think once you do that, you do right. You find, like for me, when I was in hospital for most of the time, I couldn't do this podcast, which absolutely killed me because I love doing this podcast. One, it gives me so many more books to read. Two, I meet so many amazing people across the world.
Yeah.
And 3, I get to do it with one of my best mates in the whole world. And for
Where is he?
me, for me, that's what I want to devote my time to. So if Jamie says to me, "Hey, like this week we've got 3 interviews to do," cool, awesome. If you want to do more, we'll do more. Or we've got to do 2 in one day, fantastic, because that's what I love doing. And I find that I find that I'm a better person just because of that decision.
Wait,
So
how do you
I
have?
can 100%.
Why do you have a Chicago White Sox hat on? How did that
Yeah, man.
happen?
Yeah, I was me and my dad. We were into baseball from. I was into baseball from a very young age. We used to go out. We've got a not as big as the MLB, but we've got a league out in Australia that me and my dad used to go to every
Okay.
weekend. That they played at a place called Parramatta. We went every weekend to watch it. My dad is a massive Toronto Blue Jays fan. I fell in love with the White Sox very early, so we used to watch the
Yeah.
games on Foxtel and stuff like that. And yeah, I just grew up loving baseball. Baseball is my favorite sport of all
I-
time.
I'm I'm a baseball junkie.
Awesome. I couldn't tell you the name of the people on the roster or anything like that at the moment because I haven't had
That's
a
all
chance
right.
to watch it, but I
Mm.
absolutely love baseball. And people go,
So,
"Oh, how can you go and sit through 9 innings?" Or when they had double headers, it was only 7 innings. And it's like, how can you go and watch one of the most boring sports in the world? We have cricket, which goes for 5 days. I mean, and you know what? I find that the atmosphere of a baseball game, even in Australia, is just
Mm.
so good. Like we have the
yeah,
chants, we have you know, everyone just gets so into it.
yeah,
And it just, yeah, not to some. I still watch we've got the MLB games on. I think on Disney Plus out here at the moment, which is weird.
yeah.
I don't know how it works, but
Because they
yeah, I
made
still
so
watch the
many
game.
movies. Because
Yeah,
Disney's just full of
exactly.
baseball movies.
But yeah, no, I grew up on baseball. I
Nice,
absolutely love it, 100%.
nice, nice.
Who's your team, Russ?
Yankees,
Okay,
Yankees.
yeah, not the
Of
Mets.
course.
Any person from New York, it's always the Yankees and not the Mets.
Well, actually there's a lot of Met fans out here too, but I'm a lifelong Yankees fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I
I
mean,
can
my
see
my
that.
favorite childhood movie was The Sandlot.
The
Hmm.
Sandlot. Okay. Yeah.
That's I just love. I could never play baseball. I'm pretty sport. I can play most sports, but baseball was one I could just. I wish I could do it because it's. I just love it. I love watching it.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Well, it got to the stage where me and my dad were going to so many local games just around Quakers Hill because where I used to live is a place called Quakers Hill, and we had a team called the Quakers Hill Pirates. So
Yeah.
that was a very very low, probably like single A out there, um, single A league, and we used to go there. Well, we used to go to so many events that we ended up going to the team's end of season presentations and all that because we were literally at every single
Right.
game
Yeah.
that was there. I absolutely love it.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Yeah. Well, We promised to talk about horror at some point, so why don't we give your horror book a plug? I mean, I think
Yeah,
that's a
definitely.
good way to segue into it and make Brian a
Okay.
little more happy.
All right. Well, I got a couple of horror things that I've written. I'll show you. Hang on. So, so this one. So this book, Murder in Montague Falls. So this came out
Okay.
in 2019, 18. Let me see. I can't really remember. 2019. So Murder in Montague Falls. It's myself and two of my buddies. There are three noir novellas that all take place in the same fictional town of Montague Falls. The
Okay.
protagonists are all teenagers, but it's not YA, it's adult fiction. The teenagers all went to the same high school, but the tales are set in three different decades. Now, in the first one that I wrote, it takes place in the 1980s, and it's loosely based on something that did happen to me. A paperboy, 14, 15 years old, is out collecting on his route one night. He knocks on the door. Nobody's home. So he looks in through the window just to see if anyone's home. You know, it's dark. There are shadows. He can't really see. He thinks, but he's not certain, that he sees his elderly customer get murdered. He freaks
Okay.
out, doesn't know what to do. He hems and haws. I'm like, did I really see that? I don't know. I don't know. What should I do? Should I go to the cops? I don't know. And finally decides, nah, screw it. I'm going to go investigate this myself. And his life gets rather dangerous. The second one takes place in the 1990s, written by my buddy, based off the West Memphis Three, and this during the Satanic Panic with this girl Natalie. She's obsessed with pentagrams, Satanism, devil worship, and these two best friends who are not the sharpest tools in the shed. They're both vying for her attention. Well, she knows it. So she uses that to manipulate them, sucks them deep into her world, and boy, do things get grisly. And then in the third one, it actually takes place in the 1950s, written by my other buddy. Um, it it posits a sultry high school teacher seduces one of her students in the hopes that he will murder her husband, and which was
Oh,
based
okay.
off the Amy Smart case. Yes, so all three take place in the same book, and we've gotten some movie interest on this. So
Oh,
we're talking to a producer right now. So we'll see.
Oh,
And we're starting a sequel to this, which it's supposed to come out in 2026, next year. So if you like a little Stephen King type of thing, so you get three novellas for the price of one. And then within my own series, so there are touches of horror in the Hardwick series, but I'll start with this one, which is the fourth book in the series, Blunt Force Rising, which I mentioned before. Hardwick and her protege Eric Whistler are doing private security. You can see right here on a galactic cruise ship, and it's like just a normal cruise ship on the ocean, except that it's in space. And they're hosting an AI and robotics conference at a time when androids have recently been granted rights, but just because they've been granted rights doesn't mean that everyone's okay with it. Well, while they're on
yeah.
the ship, a murder takes place, and it sets off a chain reaction where all the communication has been knocked out and there's no way to get off this ship. You're literally a million miles from anywhere. And there's basically something else has happened where there's basically a zombie apocalypse, humans and androids going at each other, and it's a full throttle, bloody, brutal fight to the finish. And either you're going to make it to the end or you are not. So it's very of the series. This is definitely the most horror. Someone actually, let me see if I can find it real quick. If you bear with me for one
yeah.
second, someone just did a review of this book in very recently, and I wanted to read something that she wrote. So it's not me. It's not me saying it. It's her
Yeah.
saying it. Where she, because she's a big fan of the series, and here it is. So she says, and this is just one small quote from it. She says, "The light, quasi cozy mystery and potentially darker political metaphorical tones eventually give way to something darker, bloody, aggressive, animalistic, primal, and fatal." And that's it. Yes, absolutely. So if you want, it's not only is it a locked room murder mystery, it's like, think of it like Die Hard in space with
Mm.
zombies.
That's
So
pretty damn
so
impressive.
So if you want some horror, that's here. And then the fifth book, which I mentioned before, in Trigger Point. So Hardwick is hired by for reasons I will not explain. She's recently been released from prison, and she's desperate to take any case she can get. And she's hired by a very nasty pimp, who she does not want to work for. But his best earner has recently been murdered, and he wants to find out who did it. But it's not about the business; it's personal for him. So Hardwick winds up getting paired up with this very sketchy police detective. And while she's doing this, Hardwick's protege, Whistler, goes missing. He's caught in this sort of temporal loop where he's phasing in and out of matter, and he's leaving these like broken half messages, and she can't understand them. And while that's also happening, the infrastructure of space-time, literally the fabric of the universe, is disintegrating. And all these pieces are kind of tied in together. And what happens is that Hardwick winds up going to this not only is she dealing with pimps and sex workers, she dabbles into the dreamscape of nightmare, really some really horrifying nightmares. And I think if you can see right here, so this blue lightning that's like surrounding her, it's specific to the book. And when I had the cover designer do it, it kind of had all these dots. And I said, hey, it's kind of like in the shape of a Rottweiler. Did you do that on purpose? He goes, no, I didn't even see that. So I had him do this Rottweiler here because it's actually very specific to the book. So it's very dark and very brutal. And I wanted to dive into the world of, now I don't sex shame the sex workers, because I just actually don't even believe in that. People make decisions of how they want to live their life, but I wanted to write specifically about women who feel like they're trapped in a terrible situation by a very nasty guy. Not all sex work is like that, but in this book it is. So this book is probably the most emotional and personal for Hardwick. It gets very, very deep into her psyche. There's a lot of psychological horror that goes on in this book. And then throughout the series, there's also a lot of cyberpunk elements involved. So while I would not call the whole series a horror series exactly, there's definitely horror elements in every single book. So the first book, she deals with a galactic serial killer. And the second book, she deals with someone who steals fragments of people's souls. And the third book, Hot Ash. And the second book, you learn Hardwick's origin story, and there's a very heavy cyberpunk vibe there. In the third book, she uncovers this dome city that's covering up this very nasty conspiracy. So if you like books that are intense, thoughtful, and there is horror throughout, there are some of it's more physical, some of it's more psychological. You're going to be, every case pushes Hardwick to the brink. And every time you think, well, how did I get through that one? The next one's even more intense. So if you like a mashup of your genres, if you like the mystery, action, I really consider these more like thrillers. So if you like that thriller, the action, the mystery, the fighting, the gadgets, the characters, the cosmic elements, it's kind of got a little bit of all that rolled into one. Honestly, I got to tell you, I didn't know what to expect when I started the series, because you never really know. They've exceeded my expectations, and I'm confident that they're all very good. But whether they're great, I let other people decide. I think personally that you won't be disappointed. I have very few people have come back to me and said, "Wow, what a turkey! You really just missed it." But everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and just because I like them doesn't mean they're good. But I feel very, very good about the entire series. And also, if you want something a little smaller, like I said, smaller bites, Montague Falls. But in any case, I don't think he can go too far wrong. I'm very, very happy. I'm very happy with the way the series has gone, and I have a very clear path for where the next 5 books will go. I already have thematically; they're already mapped. All 5 books are mapped out.
Cool. No, that's not like.
Well, I just because I'm a Kindle Unlimited member, I just grabbed Murder in Montague Falls because that's available on Kindle Unlimited, and I just paid for Crackle and Fire and got Fractured Lives on Kindle Unlimited as well. So I've got a bit of reading to do.
All right. So I will say, so in Crackle and Fire, which is the first book, there's a
Yep.
bonus short story at the end of the novel. Don't forget to read that.
Okay,
It's
excellent.
one in my opinion, it's one of the best short stories I've ever written. And just as a heads up, the entire series has a lot of sort of like Blade Runner style world building.
Yep.
It probably wasn't totally there in the first book, so I just want to give you a little bit. If that's the only thing, if I could change anything about the series, I probably would have done a little bit more Blade Runner world building in book one. But other than that, it's exactly the way I wanted it. But you're going to find that Blade Runnery stuff in the short story at the end, which for me, that's where it really everything starts to really come together. But I think you're really gonna. I'm confident that you like it. We'll see.
Definitely.
But I hope you enjoy it. And if you do, as I always say, if you like them, tell your friends, and if you don't,
Yeah.
to yourself.
That's it. And I like that. It's like you've done a post-credit scene in your book.
Yeah.
Just adding a little bit of
Yeah.
We need more of that.
Yeah.
Because I am a big comic book fan, so as soon as you said Peter David, I was like, okay, I know Peter David. He's done X Factor, Incredible Hulk, a whole bunch of other stuff.
Yep.
But I really like the cover art. The cover, like how a cover is what will draw me in to get the book, and then
Yep.
obviously what's inside is the story. So what I want to know is, I love how on those 5 books there, the covers are different yet very similar. Do you have the same cover artist that works on all of your books?
So the first one, I worked with a guy. I was happy with the cover. I hired him to do the second one, but he wasn't quite getting what I wanted. So I found another guy who's actually in Bulgaria of all places, and he's
Oh,
done
wow.
he's done covers 2 through 5. But
Yeah.
every cover of the books, personally, I designed the covers myself. And I
Okay.
said, this is what I want them to be, but then they execute because I don't know how to do any of that
Yeah.
stuff. But the designs themselves are actually all my concepts. And then the cover artist brings his magic to what he does and then makes a few suggestions, like things I didn't think of. But the basic layouts, they're mine. Whereas with Montague Falls, with this one, my partner and I, one of my partners, we worked very hard. And you'll see here, we knew from the beginning that the sign littered with bullet holes had to be the primary image, but we wanted this like written in blood. And here you can see there's the pentagram here, and then here you got the roses on top of the newspapers from the paperboy with the blood on top of them, roses from the third one. And it took months to get all these pieces to sort of all integrate, so they would all work together seamlessly to capture elements from each of the 3 stories, and they all had to kind of fit together. So I do spend quite a bit of time on the covers, and with a couple of, there's a few that maybe of all the books that I've done didn't quite get where I wanted to go, but I'm very happy. I spent a lot of time with the covers. Oh, sorry. I got one more thing to share with you, horror, and I forgot about this. I can't. Hang on. I'll be right. I'm not going anywhere. The other room. Okay. So this one just came out. So this is brand.
I saw that one. I saw that on Amazon. I was going to ask you about that.
Okay, so Hide and Seek, and this is another one. So the guy who did the Hardwick covers, he did this one as well. So Hide and Seek, The Fury of the White Mask, is part of a larger universe that my buddy Patrick Thomas runs. So actually, the easiest thing I could say is this. So I'm going to read this right from the back. This is exactly what it is. So 15-year-old Agatha is not just a descendant of Dr. Henry Jekyll. She's a spy in training with MI7, a covert faction of the British Secret Service consisting of monsters. So when Agatha's grandma Sarah is kidnapped and held for ransom, Agatha and her teen counterparts, Lily, a human cheetah hybrid, and Gil, an heir of the Invisible Man, are called into the field long before they're ready. So their mission takes them from London to Liverpool and back again. Agatha and her team become embroiled in this dangerous heist, a deadly rescue plan, and an unexpected villain who's looking to settle some old scores. So Agatha is a descendant of Jekyll and Hyde, but she's 15 years old. And she's thrust into, and she's trained to be a spy. But you're not supposed to be in the field till you're in your 20s, until you're fully trained and ready. But when her grandmother gets kidnapped, who also is a descendant of Jekyll and Hyde, she's being held for ransom. She gets pulled into the field, and while she's trying to rescue her grandmother from this mysterious kidnapper, she is going through this body metamorphosis where the Hyde serum is working its magic in her body, and she's starting to go kind of insane. And the Jekyll and the Hyde are battling for control in her mind as her body is physically going through this like Hulk-like metamorphosis. And it's not so clear who's going to win. Because if the monster side of her wins out, that's it. It's game over. So this is really this is YA, but there's a lot of body horror in there. It's got this great heist sequence that I wrote. It's action packed. It's mysterious, and I have to tell you, I was really, really happy with this one. I wasn't sure how it was going to go when my buddy presented it to me, but he said you have to have a heist, you have to have a rescue. Other than that, you do whatever you want. And I got a chance to write something that takes place in England, and I got to deal with and Gil, who's he's invisible. So you got, as you can see right, like you could see right here, right? He's got the glasses.
Oh, the glasses,
right there, and here, and that's Lily. And that's when she hulks out, and then you got, that's Agatha, and then you got Lily, who's the cheetah, and here she's chucking. I don't know if they come through, right? She's got the throwing star. The throwing star is coming through right there. Really, it's action packed, and this whole big. You can see here this giant explosion in the background, which is very specific to the plot of the book. I got to tell you, I was really happy with that. I'm hoping I get to do another one at some point. We'll see how it goes. But if you like spies, classic monsters, and some body horror, that's for you, man.
Cool. That sounds really good.
Yeah, I'm very, very, I was very happy with it. You never know how anything's going to come out.
Exactly.
And sometimes you're like, yeah, all right, it's okay. But this one, I felt real good about this one. So I'm really, like I said, I've been kind of really leaning into my darker instincts and more horror. And like I said, I've got I'm working on a college campus set murder mystery right now that has a supernatural component to it, which that's my next novel that I'm gonna finish it this year, and then we'll see what happens after that.
Amazing. Well, I think before we get too crazy, we should dive into our Patreon. But just want to let our non-Patreon members know where they can follow you, all your socials, your website, anything you want to plug.
Sure. You can find me at just my name, russcolchamiro.com, COLCHAMIRO. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. My books are available on Amazon. I'm also on Blue Sky at author Dude Russ. That's how you find me. That's my handle. I'm not on X anymore for reasons that should be fairly obvious. So that's where you can find me. And if you happen to be in the US, I'm on book tour throughout the years. In fact, I'm doing a horror convention next month. I'm doing StokerCon in June, which that'll be my first one ever. So I'm looking forward to that one. If you want to check out my podcast, Russ's Rock and Roller Coaster, you can find me on YouTube. All the episodes are free. Just put in my name and you'll find them. And I've got like sci-fi, mystery, and a bunch of if you're horror fans like you guys are, whether it's Jonathan Mayberry or Paul Tremblay, Grady Hendrix, Clay Chapman, I've Joe R. Lansdale and others. So a lot of good stuff on there. So that's YouTube, Russ's Rock and Roller Coaster, and all the episodes are free.
Cool. All right, guys, thetrueandthefictional@gmail.com if you want to reach out. But right now, we're going to dive into the Patreon.
You're definitely a true horror fan, not a fake horror fan like my wife, who only watches like the slashes but can't handle like possessions and stuff like that. So, excellent.
I don't know. I wouldn't call myself like a 10 out of 10 horror fan. I'm probably somewhere in the middle. Man, that book lives here and it lives here. And it'll never leave me. Never. So I love Strange New Worlds. I absolutely love.
How good is Strange New Worlds?
I love it. So I met Anson Mount actually
Amazing.
at a convention years ago. It was when he first was on Discovery.
You're just gonna find the right movie. You see, I never liked Tom Cruise, and then I loved that one where he keeps dying over and over and over.
Oh,
I love the Edge of Tomorrow.